Halves of degrees, Shasham, are very, very similar to halves of signs or hora. Both of them deal with the consistency in the dynamics of your personality and how that consistency makes you more or less attractive and compelling, and therefore you get more or less support and success and prosperity. The hora, or the halves of signs, makes its analysis based on the consistency of gender dynamics. The halves of degrees, Shasham, is very, very similar, but it's not exactly gender dynamics. It's more about softness or hardness and the consistency of the softness and hardness in your personality. The more consistently your soft things are soft and your hard things are hard, then the more attractive you'll be. When you're attractive, you're compelling, and you also attract attention, you become famous. When you are compelling and attractive, then you get support from people. People play along with you. People cooperate with you willingly. And therefore, you more easily get success and prosperity and fortune. If you want to know what this means to you and your chart, I have just released a brand new and very groundbreaking report that explores exactly that, all of the subdivisions for your chart. It's available now on my site, victicare.com. So first, let me explain what the Shasham is. Then we'll figure out how you can build one for yourself, and then we'll talk about how you interpret it. So first of all, just divide every sign into 60 equal parts. Each one would be half a degree. Then we're going to identify some of those parts as being hard, malefic, or masculine. But hard is the best translation of the concept of krura. So some of those divisions are going to be hard, and the other ones are going to be soumya, or soft, or gentle. You could also say feminine, or you could also say benefic. But we're going to say hard and soft. So there are specific degree halves that are hard and specific degree halves that are soft. Here they are mapped out. And this is the mapping for male signs, Aries, Gemini, Leo, and so on. For female signs, you just reverse the hardness and softness. It should now come to your attention that even though it's called a D60 or Shashtiamsha, we're actually dealing with 18 segments, not 60, because the 60 parts have been grouped into these 18 segments. And the easy way to remember which ones are hard and which ones are soft, the odd segments, 1, 3, 5, etc., are hard in the male signs, and the even segments are hard in the female signs. The fact that there's 18 of these divisions is numerologically sort of interesting, because 18 resolves to 9, and 9 is the highest number in our counting system, in our way of thinking. So it implies it's final. But the real true reason why this is the smallest division, you cannot go higher than D60. The reason is that the size of the sun and the size of the moon is exactly equal to the size of the D60. When you look up at the sky and you see the full moon, that size of that full moon is a half of degree. That is one Shasham. If you divide the signs into anything higher than 60 parts, you wind up with segments that are too small to fit the sun and moon in. But that's the whole purpose of these segments in the first place. The whole purpose of zodiac mapping in the first place is to locate the planets. So we can't make any division of signs that's smaller than the size of a planet. And therefore we can't go to higher divisionals than the D60. All right, now you know what a Shasham is. Now let's figure out what your Shasham is. Figure out your Shasham. All you need to do is know your planetary positions. Just know the sign, degree, and minute of every planet. So here's my planetary positions, for example. And then let's work with the ascendant. I'll show you how to locate the ascendant, and that will inform you how to locate anything. So you can see this ascendant is in Capricorn at 25 degrees and 7 minutes. So that means it's in the first half of the 25th degree of Capricorn. So you just put it there. And when you do that for all the planets, you can get a map like this. Now, this is an interesting way to draw a Shasham. Probably the most elegant and simple way is to just put a mark next to the planet indicating whether it's in a soft or a hard Shasham. And I will also show you yet a third way of mapping a Shasham in a moment. First, let's talk about dignity in the Shasham. In other words, how do you figure out if any planet is doing well or doing poorly in the Shasham? That issue is all about the consistency between the softness or the hardness of all the different factors that are involved in the chart. So let me explain that fully so you clearly understand it. Let's talk about the signs first. All the male signs are hard, except for those that are ruled by the very soft planets, Jupiter and Venus. So all male signs are hard, except for Sagittarius and Libra. And as you would expect, all the female signs are soft, except for those that are ruled by the very hard planets, Mars and Saturn. So all female signs are soft, except Scorpio and Capricorn. And only one more thing left to note is that Gemini is actually really neither hard nor soft, but both hard and soft. Now that we know the hardness and the softness of the signs, we also need to know the hardness and softness of the planets. Basically, the malefic planets are hard. So that'll be Saturn and Mars. Another hard planet is also the Sun. So Saturn, Mars, and Sun are hard. And as you'd probably guess, the benefic planets are soft. And also the Moon is soft. So that's Venus, Jupiter, and the Moon as the soft planets. The rest of the planets, the two nodes and Mercury, are neither hard nor soft, but both hard and soft. They're neutral. Now, this is that other way I was talking about, the third way of drawing the Shasham. It looks exactly like the way that we drew the Hora. Let's put the planets in here according to whether they're in a soft or a hard Shasham, hard being dark and soft being light. But let's also note their dignity. As we said, the dignity is all about the consistency of the hardness and the softness. So hard planets will be more dignified the more they're in hard things. So let's look at this Mars. This Mars is in a soft degree half, but it's in the soft degree half of Leo, which is a hard sign. So it has half and half dignity. It has 50% dignity. Take a look at Saturn. Saturn is in a soft degree half of Taurus, a soft sign. Yet it is a hard planet. So it's completely mismatched, and therefore it has 0% dignity in the Shasham. The third hard planet is the Sun. In this example, it's in a hard degree half of a hard sign Leo. So as a hard planet, it's completely happy with that, has 100% dignity in the Shasham. So this should be starting to feel a bit simple now. And probably you could predict that the soft planets are just the opposite. Soft planets are dignified the more that they're in soft signs and soft degree halves. For example, this Venus is in the soft 60th of Virgo, a soft sign. So it's a soft planet and a soft 60th of a soft sign. It's completely happy. Also, this Jupiter is a soft planet in a soft degree of a soft sign Libra. So it's also completely happy in Shasham. The Moon, the third soft planet, is in a hard degree half of a neutral sign. So it gets 50% dignity. The neutral sign Gemini will give any planet whatever it wants. So now you know how to assess the dignity of a hard planet or a soft planet. How about the neutral planets? Well, the neutral planets are most dignified if they have one of each type. So let's look at Mercury, for example. In this case, Mercury is in a soft 60th of a Leo, a hard sign. That's perfect for Mercury. Because Mercury is neutral, it likes to be in a neutral situation where it has access to both softness and hardness. So this Mercury has 100% dignity too. And similarly, if you look at Rahu and Ketu, they're also in the hard 60ths of soft signs, which is perfect for them. There's one more thing I want to talk about, which is the dignity of the ascendant, or like the positivity of the ascendant. What the ascendant wants is just two of the same type and doesn't care which type. It wants either a soft sign and 60th, or it wants a hard sign and 60th, but it doesn't want a mixture. So in this case, this ascendant has 0 dignity because it's in a soft 60th of a hard sign, Capricorn. As you can see, there's kind of a bit of figuring out that you have to do to get this information. If you have the interest in it and the patience for it, it's actually quite fun. If you don't worry. You can just get this information straight from my report, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and I'll go into more detail about it at the end, and I'll also put a link to it in the description. But now that you've actually done the pencil work and you have your D60 chart, your Shasham chart, now you can interpret it. So I want to walk you through the interpretations that I do for you in my report to show you how to interpret a D60. First of all, you just want to figure out how positive or negative the whole thing is overall, because the whole thing overall has a theme to it, right? And so by figuring out the overall dignity of the whole chart, you figure out how that theme is going well or not going well for you. The way to figure out the overall dignity of a chart is simple. You just average up all the dignities of everything in it. In this particular example, there's a lot of very high dignity in this Shasham, so the overall dignity of it is really quite positive. So look what the report is saying. Almost everyone finds your personal qualities extremely attractive. Depending on how positive that bar goes up, the more positive intensity you find in the wording here in this report. And then it says this dramatically increases your fame, prestige, and wealth. So what's happening in D60 thematically or interpretively is it's giving you a picture of how much consistency you have in softness and hardness, and therefore how attractive and compelling you are, and therefore how much success or prosperity you are. So the second line here in the report is this dramatically increases your fame, prestige, and wealth. Obviously, your Shasham is not going to have exactly the same numbers. This might be higher, it might be lower. But basically what's going on in this interpretation is the higher the positivity, the more attractive and compelling you naturally are, and therefore the easier success and prosperity comes. The lower the number, the more the red bar increases, the more the negativity increases, then the less attractive and compelling you naturally are. Therefore, the less you kind of get support and help and assistance from people, the more people kind of maybe even thwart you. Therefore, success and prosperity comes less easily. That's merely an overview of the whole broad topic. What you naturally want to do next is kind of dive in and figure out some details. So the report then proceeds to give you an overview of the various planets in the Shasham. So it presents you with a sorted list from the best to the worst. With this list, we can get a more specific picture of what makes this person more compelling. It's Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Rahu that have the high dignities here. So the traits of those planets, which I bullet point as leadership for the Sun, intellect for Mercury, learning for Jupiter, beauty for Venus, and extroversion for Rahu, those are the qualities that this person has their softness and hardness working well on. So those are the qualities that compel people to pay attention to this person. And conversely, even though this D60 has this great overall positivity to it, it's not very likely that you don't have any problem at all. Right? Even when you have a great chart, there's always a weak point somewhere. So here, even though there's a lot of dignity in D60, there's this Saturn, which is very undignified. It's zero dignity here. So the quality of Saturn, or that's kind of pragmatism, is out of sync with the softness and hardness. And that part of the person's personality is what turns people off and makes them want to stop cooperating. So what this part of the report does is it lets you drill in to the bigger picture to start to get some more detailed advice about what you need to do. This person can watch out for their Saturn traits, their pragmatism, and can rely on their Sun traits, their Mercury traits, and so forth. Now, also, these are just keywords for the planets: intellect, leadership, learning, beauty, etc. You want to really unpack those keywords to get a full picture. I mean, Mercury is intellect, but that's just the keyword symbolizing everything about Mercury. So what the report does next is it unpacks the keywords for you, and it gives you a list of the planets that are your strengths and a list of the planets that are your weaknesses in the D60, and it explains them in a kind of longer format. Another thing that you can do with this chart, exactly similar to what we did with the halves of signs, the hora, is we can group the planets that are similar and then sum up the dignity of those similar planets. So for example, they're the hard planets, the soft planets, the neutral planets. Let's group them up and take a group dignity for hardness, softness, and neutrality. So you can see in this case, the hard charisma is kind of lacking. So the person has this charisma which is good with soft things, but the person fails to be charismatic when they need to be tough or hard. So whatever your particular balance of the things is will give you information like that. And you can see this one has really fantastic or perfect dignity for the neutral charismas. So these neutral traits of nonpartisanship are very strong for the person. Also adaptability to situations, being able to adapt things, and relatability, the ability to span and bridge into different groups or different things which seem very disparate. The halves of degrees, Shasham D60, is extremely similar to the halves of signs. You really want to amalgamate the interpretations from D2 with the interpretations from D60 to get an even bigger overall picture. So what the report does is group the masculine qualities from the D2 hora with the hard qualities from the D60 Shasham to give you an overview of that whole masculine hardness. Similarly, it groups the soft qualities from degree halves with the feminine qualities from sign halves. And it also groups up the neutral qualities from both the degree halves and the sign halves. And that gives you a big overview. In this particular case, the person is effective in all three, but much more effective with the neutral ones. Now, a big reservation that people have about Shasham or degree halves is that it's very sensitive to birth time. Actually, this mostly is a misconception. Because first of all, we see from the groupings of the Shashams into the 18 segments, there's very few Shashams that are actually only half a degree. And secondly, for most planets, even moving half a degree takes a whole lot of time. It doesn't happen over the course of minutes. That even a fast planet like the moon moves half a degree. So there's no real reason to be too suspicious about your Shasham and think that, oh, if I don't know my birth time exactly, or if the hospital or the record keeper got it wrong, then my Shasham is totally unreliable. It's not true. But it is true in this one sense. The ascendant in the Shasham is very sensitive to accuracy in the birth time. But what I do in my report is I tell you exactly how sensitive it is for you, because it's different depending on what segment of the Shasham it's in, because as you noticed, they're not all the same size. So in this particular case here, there's 28 seconds of leeway for the birth time, which isn't too much, right? But in other people's cases, it might be several minutes. The report does give you an interpretation of your D60 ascendant, but it also gives you this caveat of how much time accuracy needs to be there. And my advice is, if the information in this interpretation just seems baffling or wrong, then just take it with a grain of salt, because it's probably a birth time issue. But if it seems right, then you have this extra set of information. So what you can do with the ascendant's degree half is figure out whether they have a conflicted or unconflicted, soft or hard personality type. Exactly similar to what we did with the hora, with conflicted or unconflicted masculinity or femininity. This particular example says the person has a conflicted soft archetype. Why does it say that? It's a soft archetype because the ascendant is in a soft Shasham. But it's conflicted because that soft Shasham is in a hard sign. Now, what does it mean to be a hard or soft personality type. Hardness means disciplined and disciplining, strict. But softness means generosity and leeway. So a hard person is very good with being strict, being disciplined, setting rules. A soft person is very good at forgiving transgressions, helping people to live up to rules instead of just punishing them, more like encouraging them. Similarly, a hard personality type is very strong. That's their asset. But a soft personality is they're very loving, they're very forgiving, they're very understanding. Finally, the hard personality type has the asset of being very reliable, like a rock. Because they're very disciplined, because they're very strong, then they'll probably do what they needed to do. The soft personality type, on the other hand, doesn't have that strength, but it does have the strength of being very pleasant or enjoyable. And that is like kind of refreshing and nourishing. So by understanding the hardness or softness of your ascendant Shasham degree, you can understand whether your personality type is hard or soft. But very important to really understanding how your personality type works is to see if it's conflicted or unconflicted softness or hardness. If it's unconflicted, then it means that it's very comfortable with its softness or hardness. Because it's very comfortable with the softness or hardness, it will be consistently soft or hard. And because it's being consistently soft or hard, that really comes across well and becomes effective and attractive. Conversely, if it's a conflicted type, what the confliction means is the person is not really comfortable with their softness or their hardness. Or maybe they don't like being that type of person. So they're inconsistently that type because they're struggling with it. They're trying to not be it, or they're not putting everything into it. So they flip-flop between being their personality type and trying not to be their personality type. So that's the basic structure for how you interpret the conflicted and unconflicted soft and hard personality types. I do flesh it out for you more verbosely in the report, as you can see here. Finally, there's one more caveat about this. It's whether or not your biological gender is consistent with your personality type from the D60. If your biological gender is consistent, then it just makes it better no matter what it is. So males are consistent with hardness, and females are consistent with softness. So in other words, hardness is kind of like a bonus for a male. It doesn't mean that conflicted hardness still doesn't have problems. But what it means is that people kind of expected those problems from you, and therefore they're not surprised or shocked by them, and therefore they're kind of forgiving or tolerant of those problems. So the problems don't cause as many problems. Similarly, same thing, if you're biologically female and have a conflicted soft type, it's not that it's not problematic, but that people tend to be okay with the problems. So the problems don't cause problems. And if it's the other way around, if your gender is inconsistent with your personality type, then it just makes things a little bit more dampened. It's the converse effect. So if you're a male with a soft archetype, even if it's unconflicted, it's still great to have an unconflicted personality type. But some people might just not want it. They might just not expect it from you. They might not like the fact that it's from you because it just doesn't work with their instincts. They don't expect it from your gender type. But most people will like it, but it will take them a second or two. The same thing goes for unconflicted hardness in a female. Now, I'm sure you want to know exactly what all these things are for you, so let me explain to you a bit about this report that's available. Now, the only remaining question is, how do you get this report so that you can get this information for yourself? That's fairly easy. You go to my website, victorcara.com, and you click on the readings link, and then you select what module you want. If you want the basic chart interpreted, get the basic module, and if you want all of your subdivisions, including the Saptamsha interpreted, then you click to include also the subdivisions module, And then you click this to enter your birth data, and then you click this button to order it. Please don't forget to like and comment, and your likes and your comments help YouTube recognize that this video is something that should be shown to new people. So please help out with that. Thank you so much.